Why are the wings coming out, Matt? Mav, this is a taxiway, not a runway. This is a very short taxiway, Mav.
You just hang on.
Holy shit!
Come on. Needle's alive. Come on.
Mav?
That's it. Come on. All right.
Mav!
Here we go.
Holy shit!
Hey guys, welcome to my living room / workshop. Today we're working on the Tomcat Throttle Quadrant build. Two things to keep in mind while you're watching this build. One, this is a 90% solution and there will be updates and changes as time go on. Second, your mileage may vary with your 3D printer and you may need to drill out holes or sand down small pieces. That should go without saying, but it is something to keep in mind. Alright, let's jump in. We're starting with the emergency wing sweep handle. We're going to assemble the button by taking the outer handle and sliding an M2 by 16mm screw in and screwing that into the button. Next, we'll drop an M2 by 6mm screw into the spring hole, slide the spring into the hole, and drop a second M2 by 6mm screw on top. This is to prevent the spring from sliding out of place. Here I'm simply sliding the lock into the handle. Now we can put the outer handle and the locking handle together using two M3 by 6mm screws. The spring I used was one I snagged out of a cheap dollar store clicky pen. I did have to enlarge the hole with the screw gun slightly, but it all worked out beautifully. Inside the sprocket handle is a GICFun 3-pin micro switch. The micro switch is anchored in place by two M2 by 6mm screws. The screws slide through the micro switch holes and screwed into the backside of the sprocket handle. This micro switch reads when the handle is in the up and down position. Here you can see me sliding the screws through the backside and then placing the actual cover onto the sprocket handle. This handle took me about a month to design, and once it was all done and working, I was really excited to see this thing come together. The top of the handle cover is held in place by two M2.5 by 6mm screws. I want to give a quick shout out to the guys over on the DCS forum, Lieutenant Yeager, Gareth, Punk, Awesome Mumbles, and everyone else that loves the Tomcat as much as I do. On the back side of the handle are two M2.5 by 3mm screws. These screws prevent the inner handle from coming out completely. You can see here on the back side of the inner handle, two channels for the screws to slide into. I found that if you over tighten these screws, it'll completely lock up the handle. But once you find that sweet spot, you'll be able to slide the inner handle up and down with ease and it'll never come out.
Giggity.
Here you can see the cutout for the lock. This prevents the handle from being pulled out completely without depressing the button first. Pretty smooth. Finally, we pop in this 608 2RS ball bearing, and we have a completed emergency wing sweep handle. Next up we have our right throttle. This throttle uses two RKJ XTF 420001 4-way Alpine switches, two 12mm push button switches, and one micro slide switch. Okay guys, a quick pause in the video to bring you the first of many updates. After shooting the video, I kept having an issue with the Alpine switch sliding out of its housing. To prevent that from happening, I extended the length of the housing and added a hole for a piece of 3D filament to slide into. This holds the switch in place. This is not my design, and I'd like to give credit where credit is due. I stole this idea from the SimNet on YouTube. I linked this page down below. It's great. I love this idea, and it works perfectly. It's a simple and wonderful design, and I absolutely love it. You can see me here sliding the filament into its place, and then snipping off any excess so that it'll slide into the housing. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Here the micro slide switch simply pops into place. It has a recess on the blade that allows this to sit nice and flush. Here we have the 12mm push button switch. This simply slides through the hole and gets held in place with the nut that came with it. Now we take the wing sweep position switch and its housing and slide it in through the cover plate. This is held in place by friction. I haven't had any issues with this or the PTT ICS switch coming apart. Next we have the ICS PTT switch, which slides in from the back and not the front. Also held in by friction like I was saying earlier. Here we have the blade that's going to sit on the back of the cover plate. It's going to get held in place by the 3 screws, what we will put in here in a moment. The bundle of wires gets fed through the blade. Now we simply take the blade and the cover plate and place it on the body. The blade, the body, and the cover plate are all held together by 3 2.5mm by 10mm screws. Off camera, I bundled together all the wires so that they would fit through the stem here, as you can see. And finally we pulled all the wires through the hole in the sprocket. And finally we pop in the 6203 2RS ball bearing and the friction brake spacer. And that's it. The right throttle is all done. Next up we have the left throttle. This is far simpler than the right throttle was. First we're just going to slide in the toggle switch. This toggle switch controls the exterior lights. Here you can see me fumbling around with the 12mm push button switch. It simply pops into place and gets the nut just like the other one did. Just like the right throttle, the wiring goes right through the blade, and then the blade sits on top of the body of the throttle. The cover plate will go on top and get screwed in with 3 2.5mm by 6mm screws. Here you can see me fumbling around with the wiring again, but it gets pulled through the stem just like it did with the right throttle. And just like before, this one also gets a 6203 2RS ball bearing with the spacer for the friction brake. And that's it. Left throttle, complete. Next up, we have the flaps handle. This all goes together pretty quickly, pretty simply. We have the flaps handle along with the flaps piece on the top. All gets held together by a 2.5mm by 3mm screw. The flaps handle also gets a 6203 by 2 RS and a spacer for the friction brake. And there you have it, quick and easy. Lastly, we have the friction brake. There are 3 parts to this, and they're all pretty simple. You have the actual link, the rotor, and what I call the pad. For this, you're going to need 3 M3 by 6mm screws. You're also going to need 3 M2.5 by 8mm or 10mm screws as well. This friction brake design works nicely, and just like before, I'd like to give credit where credit is due. I saw this from 737 DIY Sim. He's a great channel, I've linked it down below as well. This pretty much wraps up this build, guys. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and hopefully by the time you watch it, part 2 will be out. I want to give one last shout out to a friend of mine who got me into this, DJ. Absolutely love DCS, and it's been a lot of fun playing and doing this as well. See you guys in the skies.